We're back. This is the I don't think I have a name for this yet. I think I called it Villaincast at one point. But it's a Chris Baines villain podcast. This is episode two. I'm joined with Charles Harriott from Gainesville, Florida.
Hello.
Charles is a very good friend of mine. We've done plenty different places around the world. I'll let him introduce himself. So, yeah, go ahead, Charles.
Hi, my name is Charles Harriott. I am those things he said. I'm here in Gainesville, Florida right now, and I'm a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and I love travel, and I traveled a bit more before COVID, but now I still try and leave my house occasionally.
So I met Charles, I think would have been around about 2018 at the Globetrotters Heidelberg camp, which was around about
Yes,
August of that year.
where you were a horrible troll of a human being.
Nothing has changed. Uh, Charles was one of the black belts teaching at the camp. I think I was actually teaching at the camp as well, just one class as a brown belt. I looked at the instructor timetable and I saw Charles's name, and he was doing a class on Darcy's. I think my way of
Yes.
explaining this story makes it sound a bit more like I don't come across too much of an asshole. Um,
Yeah, it makes you sound like a nice person. But I recently talked to Preet about this story, and I got his version, and you're an even bigger asshole.
but what did he say?
Well, he added the details of how happy you were to frustrate and annoy me on my very first day at camp when I knew literally zero people.
I just knew I'd like you, so I thought, it was my way of like negging you or something. Yeah. So what happened
uh,
was that I saw Charles was teaching this class on the DARS, and I can't remember the full details, but I'm pretty sure I just said I don't think you could DARS me or something like that, or just like went, huh,
um,
okay.
it was literally I felt like I was in a TV show. So it was my first day. I know no one. I just met Christian for the first time. I just got referred by Dan Reed in Taiwan that like I wasn't horrible at jiu-jitsu, and so Christian just like gave me a shot. So I'm essentially like, in my view, interviewing to be like accepted in this group. And he walked up to me like, "So you're the Darce guy?" Yeah. It's like, "Well, can you Darce me?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" Like, no, 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 we'll roll. I would like to see if you can Darce me. Like, oh, okay, this is strange. And like, I think half the open mat later, like 30 to 45 minutes later, like I did not Darce you, and you had this shit-eating grin on your face. And Preet's version of the story was you ran over to him like, the Darce guy. Nope.
I think yeah, I think that did happen. Yes. Um,
And I was just like, you're an even bigger ass than I thought.
Obviously, it wasn't that bad because we're still friends now. We're still doing stuff like this.
Oh yeah, well, it forced me to take Globetrotters camp a lot more seriously. I went home to my room and I was just like, well, between that and like the standard of the instructors here, I better have my shit together. And so it definitely made me take classes there very seriously, and actually worked out very well for me because my both my darts and my leg lock class went really well at that camp, and I was invited back, and now here we are.
Yes, so that was 3 years ago or something like that. And I think during that time you were correct me if I'm wrong, you're coming towards the end of something like a 10-month trip around the world doing jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, pretty close to that. I think that one ended up being close to 8 or 9 months, but yeah, in that general region. I had
Oh,
done like a little mini trip around the U.S. to start things out in February, and then I kind of graduated from there and like made the big leap and visited my sister in Hawaii because my sister happened to be living in Hawaii at the time, and used that to get me into Asia, and then from Asia over into Greece and Eastern Europe, and then yeah, it was the end of the European leg, and then I ended up doing kind of putting around Germany and the UK a little bit before I landed back in the USA.
well, that was the so that kind of brings me on to kind of what the topic of this I wanted this podcast to be about is um that kind of blew my mind at the time. Like the whole Globetrotter thing kind of blew my mind when I first read Christian's book, 9 years ago, whenever it was. That jiu-jitsu could be this incredible vehicle for going to see the world, but you were someone who was like actively doing it at the time. And so obviously we can't do any of that now due to the Rona. But
Well, either you kind of can, like, I think, but it's just hard. Like, for example, I got to teach at the St. Bartholomew camp, the Caribbean camp with Christian
yes,
and Preet and Aaron, a few other people. But literally, everybody who came to that camp, like half of us got there, and then like 12 hours after we landed, France closed the borders and said no one else is allowed in St. Bartholomew for any reason unless it's an emergency. Like, we literally made it by 12 hours. Had our flights been one day later, we would have all been kicked out and not gotten the country.
oh
Like, and so
damn,
you can do it. And like, for example, one of the people at the camp, Met, she's just started her own world travel in the midst of Corona, and she's still doing it. She's just like, no, I'm not gonna not do this. And so, like, you just have to be it's just a lot harder. Like,
yeah,
you can do it, but it requires a lot of planning. Like, so for example, before you go anywhere, you got to get Corona tested like 3 or 4 times, and it's different for every country. And you have to get all these extra paperwork and visas. And if you have a vaccine, you get your little vaccine card. Like, it's possible. Just, it's so much planning. Whereas when I did it, I could literally be like, where do I want to go next? Let's look at skyscanner.com and like where I am to the rest of the world and see where the cheapest flight is or the most interesting flight is, and then hop on a plane and figure it out as I go. Like, that was totally possible. Whereas if you do that now, you're probably going to get in trouble and get sent back, because a lot of people who were supposed to come to that camp got sent back home due to like little things where like the country they were transiting through is now on a not okay list.
yeah, of course.
And it wasn't like 3 days earlier, like, so it's not impossible. It's just a lot harder now. Like, it's definitely difficult mode versus easy mode.
So starting from the beginning then, so we'll talk about your jiu-jitsu journey then, and your like personal journey from when you started jiu-jitsu up until the point before you decide to go and do this, like start doing this insane amount of traveling. So yeah, tell us what brought you up to that point.
Well, the irony was I never really intended to do jujitsu, so to speak. Like, I'm the classic story you hear about the person who, like, I was a karate guy, and then from karate I became kind of a kickboxing and Muay Thai guy. Like, I like striking arts. I learned a little bit of judo, went to like an Aikido or wrestling seminar here or there along the way, did like Arnis. Like, I went to a strip mall karate school, and our coach would just pretty much like learn other stuff and bring it back to us. So like, in order to keep us interesting, he would bring Kali, and so we'd do stick fighting. And then there'd be a judo guy who'd come in, or just be very much like we learned little bits of things. And so we were into ground fighting when I was just a karate guy back when I was in high school. But we really didn't know anything. Like, I was the champion of my karate school's grappling program, used as loosely as possible the term grappling program. And my special move that allowed me to defeat my entire school of other karate people was a simple headlock. My entire strategy was our matches would start out sitting back to back. You would say go. I would grab their head, squeeze, and walk in the circle like Homer Simpson. And I was the champion. Like, I was like the one-eyed man with cataracts in the land of the blind. And I was king of my tiny little, puddle. And like, genuinely thought, like, watching the UFC, like, why are these guys making it so complicated?
What kind of like year was that? Because obviously, was there much jiu-jitsu grappling in the area at the time? Was there a scene growing?
See, the irony is I was in South Florida, and it's actually a hotbed for jiu-jitsu and grappling. Just in my area where I lived, I was old school. So like, I'd been at the same martial arts school since I was 3 years old. So from 3 to 6, it was a Taekwondo school, and I was there. And then it got bought by a karate guy, and I was there from 6 to 17. So like, the whole loyalty thing of like, you don't go and leave your school was like really deep. I'd literally been raised in this martial arts school. And so like, I never thought that I needed to try and go to a jiu-jitsu school. I've been to other karate schools, and the karate that I learned there, I competed in sparring, like was always good enough. I wasn't by no means like a like national world champion, but like anywhere that I went in terms of striking, like I could hold my own. Like I had started learning boxing and kickboxing, which made things a bit more real than the point karate that I started with. And so like in my mind, I was making the progress and learning, I learned side control and we learned scarf hold and we knew a few holds. And for us, like we thought that was enough. Truthfully, like 3 or 4 miles from where I was, there was jiu-jitsu schools. I think there might, I don't know what it was at the time. I know now there's Enzo Gracie, kinds of, there were grappling schools in that area. Because I know that I have friends who I knew it from Gainesville, who lived 45 minutes from me. Like Pablo Popovich was there. Marcelo Garcia was there. Like there was amazing training to be had down there way back when. I just was completely ignorant of it because I was a karate guy. And like, we're not in the same circles. I just didn't know.
So where did you start then? So you started with the grappling in the karate school. So where was your first
That was when I was in high school. Yeah. And then I went to college and I started breakdancing instead of doing karate. I was kind of like not interested in the karate available in the area, or at least the ones that I tried out from the college clubs. And I just started breakdancing instead. It wasn't until I took a Tai Chi class and like one of the guys in the Tai Chi class told me about this guy who was teaching him like other things at his house. And then like this guy had his own system. He made it, had some grappling in it. And I started doing that with him. And then I ended up at a MMA school called F2. And then they merged with Dragon Master Martial Arts, which was the MMA school that I ended up learning my first real grappling at. And I remember when that happened, like I came home to my karate school and I was like, guys, we all suck. And I can say that confidently because like I'm the best of you guys and I'm the worst where I train. Like there's no one worse than me. There's literally nobody worse than me. And I beat you guys. So you guys all suck too.
I think the amount of people that could actually say like that's happened to them is astoundingly high, especially those of us who were there earlier on in the days of this before it became so ubiquitous that you could find jiu-jitsu everywhere. Those of us who like grappled at other martial art schools.
Yeah, it's just so weird. Well, all it took, if you were a little coordinated or like knew a move or two, like you were king and you had no real reason to look outside of it because you're always winning. You're winning among people who don't know what they're doing, but you don't know that, I
think those days are becoming less and less likely to happen these days since jiu-jitsu is kind of everywhere. I mean, I remember when in Stafford we had like there was no grappling, there was no jiu-jitsu or anything like that, and then all of a sudden I think we've got 3 black belts in this tiny town.
Like when I started in Gainesville, even that place, like so it ended up being Gainesville, Florida, which compared to where I was in South Florida and Palm Beach, Gainesville is a backwater for jiu-jitsu compared to where I was. The irony was I went all the way to North Florida where there was actually less jiu-jitsu to start grappling, whereas where I came from had way more jiu-jitsu. I just didn't know it was there.
Yeah, especially like, the likes of Pablo Popovich and all the various things that have turned up over the years, like ATT, etc. It's like
there's so much to train. I just didn't know. It was just, I mean, like the only real training I had back then, I think a guy named Trevor Sherman, who was an MMA fighter, like he did a seminar or two. But like as much as Trevor Sherman's great, like he's an MMA fighter, like how much are you really going to learn from 3 hours, right? I think we had 2 or 3 seminars. So I think I had like maybe 6 to 8 hours of training with an actual grappler. The rest was just, us knuckleheads just figuring out amongst ourselves.
Yeah, of course.
Like, it's so different. But then from there, like even Gainesville. So then like the growth in Gainesville at that point in time, the highest ranking person in town was like a purple belt.
So you move into your first jiu-jitsu school then. So who did you learn under that you got predominantly all your experience of?
That's the interesting thing. So like in the beginning it was still mostly MMA guys. I never really got ranked. There was a black belt in town who I learned under. So like he was a black belt but for whatever reason, and like how it was weird. Like he was a black belt in judo and a black belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu from Brazil. But for whatever reason, the MMA guys didn't really like want to acknowledge his black belt. Like they were saying like he wasn't really a black belt. There was like drama about that. Like, cause legitimacy and stuff is always drama. So like he was the first person I trained under. His name was Alfredo. And so like it was great. The class was taught very similarly to a judo class because also a judo black belt, and the jiu-jitsu was fine. It was great for me, but I remember there was drama about that. And then when the school closed down, because back then like it was MMA school, but no one wanted to pay mat fees, and so if no one pays fees, everyone wanted to come and train for free, and so that's not a very good business, and the place goes down. Actually, to answer your question, later on, a guy named Beto Nunez ended up moving to Gainesville from Lakeland. He's a De La Riva black belt, and I was a 4th white belt, like kind of like in sandbagger status because they never didn't promote me. He ended up promoting me from white to blue to purple to brown before he moved away to Dubai or Abu Dhabi. I'm not sure which one, during that big gold rush era where like everyone was going to Dubai.
Yeah. So who did you get your black belt off then?
So after he left, a good friend of his named Hinaldo Santos had kind of kept in contact with a lot of the Beto's old students in town, and he ended up being the one to promote me from brown to black.
Right, I see.
About 4 or 5 years ago, actually 3 years ago. I don't remember. I don't know what year it is anymore. I have my first degree now, so somewhere between 3 and 5 years ago. I don't remember.
I think this must be about 3 to 5 years ago, because I remember you've been a black belt for I think 1 or 2 years when I first met you, and that was 2016. Okay, so what did you do then? Like, you have to go into as much detail as you wish, but like personally then, so you're doing jiu-jitsu as your hobby. You didn't intend to be doing jiu-jitsu like as a
No, I honestly just wanted to learn enough to stop these little spiders from crawling up my back and choking. Like I really just wanted to learn a little. I wanted to learn anti-jiu-jitsu, just enough to like not get choked and keep punching people and kicking people. And then I kind of fell in love with it, and that was that. So during this time, I had no idea what I was doing with life. So I actually started jiu-jitsu very similar to like right when I was end of college, graduating college, and I had like a minor panic attack at my graduation ceremony as I was like, you have $200 in your bank account right now. You didn't apply to graduate school. You don't have a job. And rent is exactly $200. And so you don't really have any money. You should probably try and get a job or figure your life out. And so I ended up just teaching kickboxing for the gym that I was at, that same MMA gym, before it closed down. And one of the guys who was there who was one of my people who was teaching me grappling, he actually happened to be very high up in this local company. And he told me to go ahead and apply for an internship. And I ended up pretty much just working at that same company for 8.5 years and working my way up through the ranks from like intern to analyst to another type of analyst to another type of analyst to software developer to manager. And then my final position when I left the company was doing natural gas trading. But pretty much I had no real goal on that front. Like I only planned on working there for a year. I graduated with a physics major, and I was like, I couldn't find any examples of physics PhDs that were happy. And so I was like, I don't want to spend 4 to 6 years of my life trying to get a PhD and then just be a miserable human. Let's just see what this working stuff is about. And so I got a job, and I was like, give it a year, and if I hate it, I'll go to grad school, and if I don't, I'll do that. And that's kind of what happened. They kept on promoting me, and I liked it there, and kind of lost track of time, and was there 8.5 years working at that same company. And so I was pretty much trying to always make sure that I could train a lot. So I tried to train as often as I could. In the beginning, I trained every day for 2 hours at lunch, and then trained at night. And then as I got promoted higher in the company, I trained a little bit less, but I was still pretty obsessive and very much like no compromise about my training time as I kind of progressed through the ranks of the company. And I got lucky because that same guy who invited me to apply to the company also does jiu-jitsu, and a bunch of other people at the company did judo and jiu-jitsu and stuff. And so my obsession with it wasn't seen as like freakish or strange by, I guess, the people that mattered. It was more encouraged as like, you're doing well at the company. You're also, this hobby you have isn't bad. It's constructive.
Well, by sounds of things, it's how you're describing, like, obviously, I imagine the majority of people who may listen to this aren't black belts and don't see this kind of life that jiu-jitsu can lead to. But it's very similar how my life was prior to the black belt as well. In I, was training. I was quite militant to make sure I went there. I was running this the Fighting Fit gym because my coach just left, and then no, there's like 4 or 5 of us just rolling around in the attic which you have visited.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I was in my career as a firefighter, still am. But that was it. I was a firefighter, and that would be my life for the next 40 years, because I had no context for where jiu-jitsu could take me. I didn't have anyone to promote me. I was a white belt. Eventually, obviously, met Christian and got my blue belt and purple belt. But still, it's like, there's so many amazing instructors not far from Stafford. You think there's Braulio over in Birmingham, there's Roger down in London, there's Ollie Geddes, there's so many different amazing characters. Like, who am I? So it just seemed like the fire service was the only way to be. But then there was the amazing change around brown belt level, that no, jiu-jitsu is an amazing vehicle to actually go do these things. Maybe I'm not supposed to be a firefighter forever. It sounds like something very similar happened with you, in that you were doing this, working your way up through this company whilst also being quite militant with making sure you were training all the time. Then it seems that there's this crux moment where all of a sudden you've gone from this is my life to, wow, jiu-jitsu's like changed a lot of things now. I can actually go do something quite spectacular.
Well, the funny thing about me was like, I never really had like the goal of what I want to do with my life. I always met those people in college, those people that are like, I will be a lawyer, I will be a doctor, I'm gonna cure cancer. Like, they had like these really lofty, amazing goals. I never had that. I was always just like, I was that guy who wanted to be undecided in college. But my advisor was like, don't do that, dummy. You're just gonna end up wasting your scholarship and not getting your degree. Like, just pick one, just pick a degree. And I picked physics because it was interesting. And every one of the people, when it was kind of like, get a job, like, why would you do that? You should have picked engineering so you can actually get a job. Like with physics, you kind of need to get your PhD. You're stupid. Like, and I was like, oh, my bad. But it was weird for me because in my beginning is so similar to yours. Because I was a white belt and there was no one to promote me. And I had, at that point in time, I think 3 jobs. I had my internship, getting paid what interns get paid, which is not much. And then I was teaching kickboxing, and then I was tutoring physics. So I had 3 jobs just trying to make ends meet. And I remember when I got my first promotion to have like a full-time job at the company, and I could like go down to just having 2 jobs instead of 3, I was like, oh, this is nice. And then when the school closed down and I was no longer at the kickboxing job, and I was like, oh, I have 1 job. I'm a normal adult. I have health insurance. This is nice. Like, I can pay my bills. I can pay off my student loans. Like, the abilities to do things as an adult by just having a regular job were nice. But I never wanted to believe that. Like, in my head, I was like, you're going to go have an exciting life. My only goal was have an exciting life. And so I was like, you're going to go to Japan. You're going to go here, at all these places I wanted to go and see and explore. And I was always thinking like, this job thing, this is just a thing I'm doing for now. But I remember like when I finally went off and did it, I was just like, if you don't do this, like, you're going to get old and you're going to have kids and you're going to have a lot of reasons that are going to make this a lot harder. And so like my real motto when I started traveling, so I started traveling before I left the job. I was think it's like when I was like my last year of the job, I did like a little mini world tour in 2 weeks on my 2 weeks vacation. And I've been saving because I never really spent all that much money, because like the thing about jiu-jitsu is like you just pay your gym fees and that's really all you pay. And so like It's not like other hobbies where like if you're a guitar player, you got to get a new, nicer guitar, or like say to be like really expensive, right? If yachting is your hobby, well, you need a lot of money to support that hobby. Jiu-jitsu, you really just need your body. Unless you're a gi snob, you don't really need all that many gis.
No.
You know, like it's very affordable. Like the training can be expensive, right? Like jiu-jitsu costs more than other martial arts. If you're gonna go to a karate school, the dues are usually considerably cheaper than if you're going to jiu-jitsu school, especially compared to judo. Like judo fees are way lower than jiu-jitsu fees. And so on that front, it is more expensive. But if you compare it to any other sport, like golf, for example, it's just dirt cheap.
Oh yeah. Like it's I don't think martial arts at all has ever come to maybe some of the more amazing schools out there, like I know Art of Jiu-Jitsu or something might be a little bit more expensive, but like the average town jiu-jitsu gym,
but even that, like the top tier, like I think the most expensive jiu-jitsu gyms are like what, $300 a month? And like that's expensive, don't get me wrong, but it's nothing if you compare it to like a membership at a country club if you want to play golf, you know?
No, that's true.
It's orders of magnitude different of how much investment and money you have to make. Or if you want to learn how to fly a plane, or if you want to become a drag racer, right? You have to get a car. And if your car is a piece of crap, it doesn't matter how good of a racer you are. Like it doesn't have that prohibition of I need stuff. Like how the quality of your stuff doesn't really affect your performance, right? You can have a piece of crap basketball short and t-shirt, and the guy in the full like what's it called, like lucky gi, or what's the gi that people can like Jordans? I forgot what's called again.
Shoyu roll.
You know what I'm talking? Yeah, or a shoyu roll. The guy in the shoyu roll gi, his jiu-jitsu skills are not better than yours because he has a shoyu roll gi, right? Like if you have a piece of crap hand-me-down gi, you have just as much chance to beat that guy.
Actually, you say something like that, it's a slight segue. It's one of the funniest little like jokes I've heard like a few years ago. Not like laugh out loud funny, but just still tickles me to this day. Is that someone said their favorite Olympics is the Winter Olympics, simply because when people fail there, it makes them happier to watch. Just because,
What?
as in the Summer Olympics, like you can be anyone from anywhere, and if you're fast and you can a coach who can just teach you, and a track that you can run on, you can get good. But the Winter Olympics, only people who can enter the Winter Olympics are those who can afford to go to these amazing places like ski resorts, or afford a bobsled or anything like that. And so you're watching fail. And that's just like a much more fun sport to watch. Just
this is why we're friends. You're like you're a bit of a sicko. I like it. You're bathing in the tears of people's shattered dreams. Like, yes.
And ever since that, it's made me appreciate the Winter Olympics a lot more, because fails at Summer Olympics, it's like, that's sad. They've built themselves up maybe from nothing to get to this amazing games. The Winter Olympics are just rich people throwing money away. It's like,
I don't know. I think you're forgetting about curling. I think that anybody can be a curler. I when I first saw that, I'm like, this is amazing. Like, they made sweeping into a sport. This is amazing.
You say that, but there's also like there are some summer sports which are you can say the same about, really, where there's definitely a richer part. But by and large, if you can throw stuff or run fast, then you don't really need the money for it, but you definitely need money to go.
Exactly.
Anyway.
Getting back on track, because we're gonna have segues, because we're both ridiculous people.
Yeah, we're
going
ages.
What I was getting at was just the beginnings of just that hunger, because like I never wanted to believe that I was just gonna be a desk jockey. In my head, like working the desk is paying for like my real life, and I never knew what it was, because like I never wanted to be in the UFC. I had this fantasy. So my fantasy wasn't that I ever wanted to be in the UFC. My My fantasy was that I wanted to train at the gym of the guy who was the best in the world and beat him regularly, and no one needed to know about us. So I could know that I was actually the best in the world, but never have to take any actual risk, never have to go out there and put all the lights and stuff. But I would know inside, and that'd be enough for me. That was my dream as a kid.
When because obviously you have to do like an short instructor like bio for the Globetrotter camps. And I think yours was like, sometimes compete, sometimes win. And it was like, there was no ego there, anything like that. Yeah, you know, like I say, you've trained with some pretty incredible names throughout the years. Like, some of the stories you've told me. Yeah,
I've had a great time with it. But the funny thing is, like, that's always been my thing. Like, I always prefer the gym. There's something for me, like, I fell in love with visiting gyms. So, like, even before I started traveling, like I ended up doing now, like when I was in Florida as a white belt, I would go and get in the car and drive to Jacksonville to go train at a gym that had some guys that were supposed to, like, just like, it was like all like hearsay, like, oh, these guys over in Jacksonville, they're really good. And like, we just get in the car, all right, let's go train with those guys. And that was always my thing, because you go to the gym and like, you get to roll with them over and over again. Like, I was always cheap as heck. So I was like, I can pay $100 to go to this tournament, or $50 back then. Probably it was like 50 or $60 back then. And if I lose, I'm done. I just get one match. Maybe I get two if I do gi and no gi. But if I go and I pay this $15, $10 mat fee, I can roll with a whole gym. And that was always the choice that I made. I would always choose to roll with that whole gym. And I would be in the car, like the worst training partner ever back then, thinking about it, like amping myself up, like listening to like songs to amp myself up, like the Roots, like, okay, here I come, I'm gonna do this. And like just going to war in what's supposed to be a regular class. Like, that's how we train. We didn't train like, let's be suave. No, it was like every roll was to the death. Like, I got choked unconscious. Like, it didn't matter. I just wanted to get better.
I don't think white belts have changed. I think they still try and roll to the death, no matter where they go. But actually, like, it's funny you say that, because I was pretty much the exact same, because I had nowhere really to teach me. I was traveling a lot. I'd go to Leicester to Leicester shoot, or I'd go to seminars, or I'd go down to London, and I'd maybe go down like maybe on the early commuter trains and try and get like an early class at like 7 or 8 a.m. Then go for a lunchtime class and an evening class, and just like really just like hit everything I could in one day, like pack multiple gis. I was just this white belt rocking up. So maybe it's kind of like this. We started local and then it just got wider and wider.
That's really how it went, because like you gain the confidence of, right? I got the confidence of traveling 2 hours, because there was the best guy at my gym who was a wrestler. He was a D1 wrestler, like refused to get ready to Jiu-Jitsu. And he would show up, and I knew that like almost anywhere we went, he was going to wreck the room. And then I was the guy with him who like had like maybe half his skills, if that, with like no wrestling pedigree, who everyone would look at me like, okay, he's with that guy, he must be good. And I'm like, no, I'm just his friend, but I'm here to go. So like he would immediately, like, we would lose all possible like grace, because he'd show up and just start wrecking people. And so like they kind of take out the fact they couldn't beat him on me.
Yeah, that sounds pretty familiar actually. Because just for anyone listening to this or who doesn't know anything about me and Charles, we've been on some pretty funny little adventures already. We did a you managed to get me to go over to Octopus BJJ over in Tel Aviv.
Yeah, you went to Tel Aviv with me. You were the first person that I got to bring with me to Israel. It's a blast.
Yeah, it was the first time I'd ever been to Israel, and yeah, I can't say enough great things about everyone at that gym, Shaul and
yeah, Shaul and Gidon, they were amazing. Yeah.
Oh, they're such a lovely gym. Although I think you kind of like set me up to fail quite spectacularly.
What are you talking about? You didn't fail at all. It all worked out great. I just didn't tell you that I entered you in a super fight.
Yeah, you didn't tell me that you entered me into a super fight with like a really well-known Israeli MMA fighter, and that was the main event of the whole like Israeli match.
I didn't know that either. So all I knew was that someone said, "Hey, would you and your friend like to compete while you're here?" And I just said yes. And that was it. I never knew that anything else.
I'm kind of glad it went well. Although it still does make me laugh, because I remember obviously before your fight we had this like long conversation about what the rules could be.
Oh, they were so confusing because it was IBJJF rules, but like even more like anti leg lock, and I like leg locks, and so it was a horrible thing for me. But you did great.
I think I remember just saying like, don't leg lock, just don't leg lock. You don't have to leg lock, and you did go for the whole 15 minutes and didn't do a single leg lock. Yes. And I think it was like 14 minutes and like 58 seconds of like a 15 minute.
We got the video. The actual leg lock happened at actually 15:01. So technically it happened after time was over.
I think it was the reap that mattered more.
But there was no reap. I've sent this video to we can find the video and you can include it with the package if anyone wants, some corollaries to the story. I've had IBJJF looks at this. I did not reap. It's a false flag. It did not happen. Look into it.
I think you might have got gringoed, maybe.
No, I don't. I mean, maybe. I think it was one of those things where, like, yeah, the hometown thing is definitely a factor. But as the referee told me, like, I still remember that. Like, why would you give me a chance? And like, you just asked me like why I would give you a chance to disqualify me? Like, what?
Yeah, there might be a slight gringoing. And then so obviously we did the Israel trip, and then there was the 2 stints in America. So
yeah, your mini tour the first time, then we had a proper one the second time, that whole East Coast. I'm really happy. Like that was
we finished that. I think I left New York the day they had their first instance of COVID. So I'm pretty sure that I was panicking airports or something. They blame me. Patient 0 going up the East Coast.
Who knows? Maybe.
So going back to the story then. So you trading in natural gas, you were obviously climbing the ranks in jiu-jitsu at the same time. I think that's actually quite that's something important. There's a brilliant documentary by a friend of mine, Dan Lewis. He did Roll Jiu-Jitsu in SoCal, like millions of views. It's really, really good documentary on YouTube. And one of the opening segments of it is a short interview of Chris Houter. He says, picture yourself in 10 years time, natural athlete or not, you'll be a black belt. So no matter what you're doing, like in your life, trading natural gas or firefighter on my side, as long as you keep training, you will get that black belt. And as long as you don't stop. And we both did that. And now we're on the other side of it. And we're both pretty much getting to the point where Rona be damned. We're now doing jiu-jitsu on those belts as a life. And it's so you got to the point then where you were now doing those 2 things at the same time. You had your black belt and you're working to obviously do more of your life. So what was the point then that you said, right, I'm gonna sack off work and I'm just gonna go travel?
Well, it was one of those things where, like, for a while I had already kind of been like thinking, like, mainly because of the fact that, like, I did a little trip to oh wow, I actually just remembered something. I hadn't thought about it in a while. I did a trip while I was still at the company, and I did a trip, and I went to Japan, Netherlands, and London. It was a 3-stop trip, and it took 2.5 weeks. And I remember through the trip, I met a lot of people. But I kept meeting people at hostels and stuff. Like, I had the job that last job I had was the best paying job I've ever had in my life. And so, and I've always made sure to, like, still live really frugally. And so I wasn't really, like, at a loss, but I still refused to, like, be extravagant, because, like, for whatever reason, like, it's just not really in me to be that guy who's just, like, flossing and, like, throwing money around. It's just not my thing. But I love traveling. And so I kept seeing people who I knew like just had so much less than me. And they were just so happy. They were so happy, like whether they were lost or they knew where they were going, it didn't matter. Like they were just genuinely happy. So from like random people who were working places to other travelers to some of my friends that I met along the way, or my friend who had moved from the US over to the Netherlands, and he had a life there, and it just kind of like was sticking with me. Like these people are so just fulfilled and happy, and like why do I have this anxiousness, like this antsiness about like when am I gonna do it? Like when am I gonna actually travel? Because I'd always wanted to travel. I actually had ironically, I never read Christian's book. So it was given to me as a gift. I had heard about him, and the first thing I thought with like my arrogant ass when I heard about the book was like, damn, someone else did what I wanted to do. Like I won't be the first if I do this. Like I was annoyed. I was like, oh, my idea, because I was a brown belt at the time, and I was just like, someone else has done the thing that I was gonna do. Ah.
I think he was a brown belt when he did it as well.
Yeah, but I think I didn't even get the book when it first happened. Like there was like legends of this guy who did this, and then I heard about the book. The book was given to me as a gift, and I saw the book, and the book was a thing just like, what the fuck are you doing? Like you should do this. And it was sitting in the back of my head. And in short, like the kick in the pants was like me and my job like kind of broke up, so to speak. And I was in a situation where I was sitting at home, and I was just like, my motto was like, for a lot of things I was doing in my life at that time, like just trying different things. I went over and I did the sensory deprivation tank, the float tank. And I remember it like it was yesterday. It was for the very first time I'd ever done it. And I wasted my first 15 minutes of the float tank like on distracted thoughts. I had T-Pain on my my GPS. And so on the way to get to this place, I kept on hearing in a quarter of a mile, turn left. And so that was my GPS. And so my first 15 minutes in the float tank, that just kept on popping up. And I was like, you're wasting it. You paid money for this. Like, hey, take the experience, turn left, shut up, turn left. And so like that was stuck.
We may get some like
in my head.
That is uncanny. Like
it was only on there for a short amount of time. So I was on Waze. It was a short amount of time. You had the T-Pain navigation a few years back. I loved it, but they didn't pay him his rights for long enough, so it went away, and it ruined the first 15 minutes of my sensory deprivation. After that, like I kind of went in and started like going into the place, and like a few epiphanies started happening about just things that I'd been putting off doing, things that I hadn't done. And I was like, okay, like, what are you gonna do? You're gonna do this? Like, and so I had like a bunch of ideas that I left with. Some of them were personal, some of them were professional, and I went straight from the float tank to open mat. So this is in Tampa. It's a place called Ybor City Combat. I don't know if it's Combat Club or Ybor City Jiu-Jitsu, and they had their open mat. And I remember the guy who was running the open mat asked me just like, what's your name? Oh, I'm Charles, blah, blah, blah. And he asked me what I did for a living. And I said my job. And I just started like pouring out like every insecurity that I had about my job and what I'm doing with my life and like where I wanted, like, you know, and like, it's as if like after the float tank, like I was so released that like everything that like I refused to admit myself about what I wanted in life just poured out. And the guy looked at me because like I don't know this guy. I just met this guy. Like I'm pouring my soul out to this guy about like how I don't know what I'm gonna do with my life and like how all of this stuff. And he just like gave me a hug, and he was just like, I know what it's like to do things I don't like. I was like, I'm a veteran. Like I know what it's like. He was a veteran. He'd been in the military. Like, I know what it's like to like do something that you don't fully believe in. I was just like, I'm like, dude, like it's not that serious. Like I have a great job. Like I was like my conscious mind was like fighting my subconscious at that point. And it was so weird. And then I went to roll, and like rolling was surreal. Like everything was happening in slow motion. Like people would go stuff, and I'd be like, oh look, there's a chuck there. And so I had like the most magical rolling experience. And then I like went back home and I was like, what the hell? And then from there, I just kind of slowly decided I was going to do this. And then I took the plunge. And I guess about a year after that. So about a year after that happened is when I finally left the country. I just kind of set my affairs in order a little bit. And so that happened while I still had the job. Me and the job broke up a little bit after that happened. And what ended up happening was just kind of embarked on the trip and just decided that I was going to do it. And I didn't have any reputation outside of like Florida, Georgia, and North Carolina. I'd only done a couple of seminars. I don't have a big name. I haven't won anything, right? I'm not a world champion. I'm not even a state champion. I mean, I guess at blue belts, I was the blue belt state champion at a couple of tournaments, and I won a couple blue belt absolutes. I've won my share of Nagas and new breeds and other tournaments that no one cares about. But I didn't have any IBJJF accomplishments. I didn't have any titles. My MMA record was 0-1. I had one MMA fight that I lost. Like there was nothing super impressive about me. But I decided to like hit the road and see what happened. At this point, I'd gotten my black belt because a year had passed from when I traveled as a brown belt. And my friend in Miami, Daniel Perez, decided to let me teach a seminar at his gym to be like a fundraiser for my trip. And some of my family members that I hadn't seen in forever actually supported. They came out just to like show up and give me their blessing. People I hadn't seen in like 5 or 10 years were like, we're so happy you're following your dreams. And I was like, this is crazy. And then I set off and I started begging people to like give me a shot teaching at their gyms. And a lot of people just said, no, who are you? Or what have you done? And they just said no. It's like so many no's.
So that's actually one of the interesting points I want to kind of go on to is that, so obviously, you know, if your name is Craig Jones or you're part of the Dan Hurd squad, trying to land a seminar isn't that difficult. Obviously, it's a little bit easier if you're a black belt in general.
Yeah, having a black belt helps in certain parts of the world for sure. Just being a black belt in a lot of places, though, people still want to know who the hell are you. Yeah,
of course. Yeah, I think you have those like, you know, what have you done and what's your lineage, etc., which is kind of understandable
exactly.
in a sport. They want to know like what have you won to actually, you know, deserve the right to be able to teach this.
Yes.
So, what would be your advice then?
Well, I'm happy you said that. That's right into what I was going to talk about next. There's many ways of doing it. The way that I kind of stumbled onto was I just went back to my roots. And so my roots of traveling and visiting gyms was always every time I go to a gym, because this is what I've been doing since a white belt, all I want people to come away with is two things. That I don't suck at jiu-jitsu. They don't have to think that I'm good at jiu-jitsu. I just have to perform well enough when we're rolling and drilling so they don't think I suck. Right? It's a pretty low bar. Like they just have to think I don't suck. And thing number 2, they think that I'm not an asshole. And if they do think I'm an asshole, I must be a lovable asshole. Because right, I can't be someone they don't want to ever see again. I can't be someone they don't want to spend time with. And so like, and it's not being fake, it's just genuinely being me. Because there will be people who think I'm an asshole or just don't like me. But that's fine. Like, if that's the case, if me being genuine me, like they don't like me, then that's fine. I don't have to see this gym again. But generally speaking, I'm pretty agreeable. I get along with most people. I got a pretty broad set of things that I enjoy. Like I can hang out with the Dungeons and Dragons people. I can hang out with the anime people. I can hang out with people talking about fitness. Like I'm pretty well read. Like I just usually talking to someone, there's some common ground that I can find, whether it be music, dancing, like I'm very much someone who's just a lover of the human experience and like the things that exist on this earth. So like generally speaking, like there's something we have in common. If at a minimum, jiu-jitsu, right? Because we're all in the gym and we're all obsessed with jiu-jitsu. At a minimum, we can relate to that.
I'd say that's.
But I'm not going to be a dick about it.
From my short experience with traveling around and going to various gyms and camps and other places, again, like trying to think about the, if anyone's listening to this and they're having the same ideas for when we can do this again. Aside from maybe the super cultish atmospheres you may get at some gyms, or maybe which that's dying out anyway, and the initial kind of painful roles where people try and like defend the gym's honor, we're all have this amazing thing in common. And once
But I
the
think even that part is good. I still think even that part is good. And I think my best advice to people, at least people who are, and this is going to sound, I guess, kind of sizist, if that's a word. Like, if you're at least a medium-sized human, I think the next things I'm going to say are a decent thing. If you're very small, or you're elderly, or you're just prone to injury, then by all means, just don't roll with those people that are trying to defend the gym's honor, or mat enforce you, or crush you, or whatever it is. But if you're medium and like able to make yourself somewhat fit, I always view jiu-jitsu as a martial art. And so every gym has a different culture. If you walk into a gym and they're super flowy and friendly and like, yeah, it's all have fun, dude, you shouldn't go in there and try and break everyone in half just to prove that you're like the king. But on the other hand, if you walk into a gym and they're a bunch of killers, you should be able, right? If you're sufficiently advanced in jiu-jitsu, you should be able to hang with at least their beginners and intermediates, if not everyone in the gym, and show that you're a martial artist. Now, you don't have to. Like this, like I said, you don't have to. If you're gonna risk injury or a fight, like by no means. But there's definitely gyms where their gym culture is we roll hard. And I think that you should be able to handle a hard roll. I think that matching the gym's culture without necessarily escalating into like, we're going to go ADCC and break each other, but still being able to, like, if someone turns the heat up on you, but they're not trying to injure you, right? They're not trying to snap your limb. They're just trying to go roll hard. You should be able to roll hard with them. And so I think matching the culture of the gym is a key thing when you travel so that you can make friends. Because I've been to gyms where I've been too kind and they've just been like, oh, this guy just sucks at jiu-jitsu. Or I've been to gyms where I might be a little too aggressive, like even if not even like injuring people, just tapping people out too many times. You tap out someone more than 3 times at some gyms, you're kind of seen as being rude, right? It's like at other gyms, they want you to tap as many times as you can. So it all depends on the gym that you're at. But I think being able to kind of understand the breadth of gym culture and you, the visitor, being able to adapt is a really powerful skill.
Yeah, I'd say like if you, especially any like white belts, not listen to this, non black belts. I think that's maybe like a key nugget to take away from this is that when you go, it's been able to read the room. Like you have your own culture in your own gym where you might roll hard, you might not roll hard, but being able to go into a different gym and be able to read how that gym is, and like, are they rolling hard, are they or is it very friendly, very relaxed, and it definitely makes the group warm to you if they can see you as one of them.
Yep.
And yeah, like that's going back around to having something in common. We all have this in common. It's quite funny, like all the night outs we've been on after various seminars and places we've been to, how many like maybe partners of like the coach who come along with us, and how utterly bored they are because everyone else around the table is into jiu-jitsu, and that's all we can talk about. And
it's so sad. I try so hard not to, but when I'm around, if you give me another jiu-jitsu person, like there we are, it's over.
it's a good thing because all of us can talk for hours on this one subject. It's terrible for anyone who isn't in this. But again, this is if this is advice for people who want to get out there and make up for something they didn't do pre-COVID, thinking they always had this should I go traveling, and now
agree. Always ask. Like that's the biggest thing. Like people, almost everyone, the same way that they love jiu-jitsu, most people, no matter where it is, it could be New York City or it could be like some tiny little town in the middle of nowhere in some part of the world that you've never would think of going to, they're proud of their town. Like even if they don't necessarily like it and they want to move, there's something cool about their town and they want to show it to you. Like that's been actually the best part of my travels was going to these little places that I would never otherwise go, like, and just people taking me around to see cool stuff, and like even next to the gym, like, hey, where should I go? Or hey, do you wanna go somewhere? They'll take you to the coolest things. Like I got to go to a tattoo shop, where like this famous, like world famous tattoo shop. And I'm not really super into tattoos, but the place was gorgeous. And my friends who don't have tattoos, but I would take pictures for them. Like, hey, like I went to see this guy's tattoo shop. Like, and it's random, but it's in a tiny little town in East Germany that I would never otherwise go to. But because of jiu-jitsu, I went there. And so like it's I think just you make that bond on jiu-jitsu, but then like the thing that I didn't do in the beginning was I didn't see the outside of mats. When I first started traveling, I literally just went from mat to mat. Like I would get on them, see the mats, then like maybe I would see a park on the way to the airport, and then I go to the next place and just see mats. And that's fun, but ask the people about their town. And when you're not training becomes so much better.
There's actually I had a lad. It was his first time, I think, leaving Malaysia. This would be about 4 years ago now, so just prior to me meeting you. And it was his first time leaving Malaysia. He had this around the world trip planned, because when you're on your first holiday, spend 10 months traveling. And he was I don't know, early 20s, blue belt, and his first stop, I think, was Stafford and my sofa. And that's one of like the first things that I really picked up about life in general, and like I say about being proud of your own town, is that it taught me to look up. And because everywhere I kind of, I took him around the town, and I was, trying to take him to the places that I think he'd be interested in, from a tourist perspective. But he'd just stop at the random times and just look up and take photos, and it just kind of made me do the same and appreciate what I actually had around me. And I completely agree with jiu-jitsu, something that Christian said in one of the first camps in this. I think it was like, it didn't make it onto the full interview, but Dan Lewis's interview with him. And he said that jiu-jitsu is a fantastic vehicle for seeing the world. He's not massively into jiu-jitsu, completely insanely. Obviously, he does it all the time. But when you can see it as this life vehicle, like it changes your perspective on it. And the amount of things I've done since taking that on board has changed everything. I would have never gone to probably Tel Aviv, Israel. I would have never been to Gainesville or any of the...
No, you wouldn't. You'd never go to Gainesville, Florida.
Well, no, but any of those places we did on that East Coast tour last year, like Johnny's place over in...
Asheville, yeah.
Asheville. I've actually I'm doing one of these with Johnny soon, so anyone who's
Johnny's
check out that one, because that's going to be really interesting. But yeah, or like going to Tallinn, to Estonia, or like Heidelberg, or Connecticut, all these like places that never even appeared on my radar, but all of a sudden I'm the guy looking up, and there's people wanting to show me around their town. And so definitely for those people who maybe listen to two black belts talking about the fun of traveling with jiu-jitsu, do take on board the idea that it's not just for us, as in you go to any of these gyms, as long as you can be a amiable person, you can kind of be empathetic to the culture in the gym, and kind of match and the people in there. And like Charles has said, don't be an asshole, or at least if you have to, be a lovable asshole.
Exactly.
You'll find that people just want to show off their town, and jiu-jitsu is just, to parrot Christian, and one of the most important lessons, that literally maybe the most important lesson I've ever had of jiu-jitsu, is that it is a vehicle for seeing the world. It's not.
It really is.
It's a thing that's trapped in the four walls of your gym. What advice then, like crucial bit of advice, like for anyone from white to black belt who wants to get out there and do a trip?
I would get you. The first thing is like you have to be comfortable. So like by the end of all of my travels, like I can travel anywhere. I can travel comfortably, like with one tiny little bag, and be completely like Spartan and sleep on someone's couch, or I can travel nicely and have like luggage and go to a proper hotel. Like I'm pretty comfortable with the entire spectrum of things. The first thing you got to figure out is what are your minimums, right? Like everyone has their minimum things that they need to feel comfortable. So like for me, I got all the way down to all I really needed was one pair of shorts, one pair of long pants. I am personally partial to Dickies. I just like them. They're comfortable and they're breathable and they take up less space in your bag, especially compared to jeans. A lot of people go with jeans, but they're a little big. But we're getting too deep in the weeds right now. Just what's your minimum that you need to be comfortable? And then the next is going to be, where do you want to go? And like, if where you go matters, then what you do to save money on the traveling is you just make the time flexible. And if you don't care where you go, but the time is not flexible, then you can go and just type into your thing, like, here's where I am, and let's take a ticket to anywhere. And then you can see, well, what's the cheapest place to go or the most interesting place to go? So like, I'll look at the top, like 5 cheapest places to go, and then I'll cross-reference them with like, what gyms are there? So like, even before I started traveling, I did little trips, right? So I had my first little trips around Florida. And then whenever I was on vacation or had a business trip, I would just look up, okay, type in Jiu-Jitsu into Google Maps in that area. Oh, look, Ryan Hall's 50/50 is a 3-hour car ride from here. Okay, can I get a car? All right, looks like I'm driving to 50/50 instead of seeing the sights of Washington, D.C., because why not? And then I'll see the sights of Washington, D.C. later. Or I had a work trip to New York, and it's like, hey, do you guys mind sending me back 2 days later? And so then I got to go train at Marcelo Garcia's in New York, and I got to wander around New York and got to train at like one of the most famous gyms in the world at that time. And so like if you start off just adding it as a little piece of your vacations or a little piece of your thing. And then once you get comfortable there, the big leaps are really like making your first trip that is just for jiu-jitsu. Because for a long time, jiu-jitsu was a little sidebar. I would go and take a vacation and I just find a gym, and a couple of days of the trip was jiu-jitsu. But the first time you make a trip that's just for jiu-jitsu is kind of a big problem. And then your first time leaving your country, maybe not in Europe, because Europe, your countries are so close together that leaving the country is not a big deal for you. But for an American, the first time leaving the country and doing a jiu-jitsu trip was a big deal. And then the next big deal for me is like going to a country where maybe English isn't the main language. So then like the language barrier makes things a little like extra interesting. Asia's definitely, I'd say, probably the hardest, just because of the fact that like language barrier can be a thing. And sometimes you need visas and stuff depending on what country you're coming from. At least the place I went to so far. I haven't been to Oceania or Africa yet. So they're still on my 2 areas of the world I was planning on going to. But that's kind of a thing. Europe tends to be the easiest just because of the Schengen visa. So you once you're in Schengen, you don't really have to worry about things as much as you would in other places, right? So pre-Schengen times, it would be really hard to keep crossing borders, but Europe makes that kind of easy. And a lot of people speak English in Europe, just like a lot of people speak English in certain parts of the world. And so I recommend just kind of set yourself up to make little gradual steps forward, right? Like I got comfortable visiting the gym across town, and I didn't come away thinking that my gym's better than their gym. Or maybe you did, but like, don't be a dick about it. Like, it's okay to have your thoughts. Like, if you think this gym's better or worse, but rather than trying to rank yourself and like seeing the visit as a measurement, I like to just try and figure out what makes this gym special. Every gym has something unique about it. It could be an actual technique. It could be the way everyone gets along so well. It could be something aesthetic about the gym, like Mjolnir in Iceland is one of the most interesting gyms ever that you'll ever go to, just for the architecture. Like the jiu-jitsu is great too, and the fact that just Icelandic men are huge humans, and so like going into a room where everyone is bigger than you, for me, it's kind of strange. But every gym, just try and find that thing and try and learn from people. Like an open mind is your friend. So I kind of run on sentence, but to come back to the beginning, find your comfort zone in traveling, to get a recap, right? Your comfort zone in traveling, start, kind of give yourself a gradual build up to kind of increase your difficulty as you go, with the layers being like a trip dedicated to jiu-jitsu, maybe a trip outside of your country, then a trip to a place where maybe they don't speak your native tongue, and then go on from there as you make things a little more challenging for yourself. The Globetrotters camps are great. Going to a camp is kind of like letting someone do it for you, right? Because you're going to get jiu-jitsu overload, whether you go to a BJJ Globetrotters camp, or I've been to the ZR team camp in Peloton. I've been to camps run by other gyms. The very first camp I went to was just run by a gym from Pittsburgh called Limitless, because a friend of mine knew it. So like camps are a nice, easy way to like get that jiu-jitsu overload without having to plan anything yourself. But there's something special for me to when you do it yourself outside of the camp environment that just feels like you make more friends. Use the BJJ Globetrotters website, like just typing it in, being like, who wants to host me? It's harder now with Corona, right? People don't want strangers in their house, but you can get around that if you just get your COVID tests or get your vaccine, so you can be like, look, I'm not going to contaminate you. Like, please trust me. Best advice I can give on that one until the Rona gets a little more manageable.
I'd say like maybe, I'm hopeful, optimistic, or whatever, that the world will bounce back to normal at some point. So I think going from what you said there about you can almost have like a trip advisor for people who have visited different gyms and give advice.
Oh, ask me questions for real. Like, hit me up on Facebook or Instagram, whatever. Like, I like answering jiu-jitsu questions, especially travel questions. Like, if you want to ask, like, what websites do I use and this and that, because there's almost always the question of either time and money. If you have time and no money, you can get a lot of places for almost nothing. If you have money but not time, then there's usually a direct flight to most places. Like, do you want to spend? And there's usually, if you're smart, there's a middle ground, right? Like, do you really want to spend an extra 15 hours on this plane to save $20? Probably not. Spend the $20. Save your life.
So obviously, you were big into the travel then before Corona happened, and
yes,
you didn't have your own like home gym, or you were the main coach or anything like that. So
I coached at a gym, yeah.
How has this whole experience with the Rona changed how you've been able to do your jiu-jitsu, and what you are planning going forwards?
It's kind of given me comfort with having some roots. I was definitely in denial about Corona for a while. I still remember telling my girlfriend, like, oh yeah, it'll be over in like a month, like 2 weeks or a month. Like, don't worry about it. She's like, I'm gonna get mats. Like, no, we don't need them. Like, the gyms will open back up.
Yeah, that didn't age well, did it?
I was horribly wrong, and she loves telling everyone this as often as she can. Like, I got mats in the beginning. He thought this was going to be over in 2 weeks, and I was just like, yeah, there it is again. I'm so thankful, and so like I got to kind of experiment on her as a guinea pig student, because the cool thing about being trapped in an apartment with one person for so long was that as an instructor, I know that you know this, you almost never get, you have a few obsessed students, but you don't get to have students hit every lesson that you're teaching, right? Because say that you have something you want to teach over the course of a month. Students are going to miss classes, or you can't make every class new, because you have to repeat some classes because people are going to miss class, or they don't come on that day, or whatever it is. But to have someone that I knew every single day, we're going to train, and they're going to be there, and I can build on what I did yesterday. And if you didn't get what I did yesterday, I can review. So to have just a single person to just kind of like download my jiu-jitsu into in whatever fashion I want, I got to refine the way that I teach certain things and teach things in a very different way. So like having her to be a student of mine and having her be willing was pretty amazing, because she had already started jiu-jitsu before I started teaching her. But having her be willing to let me coach her that way was pretty amazing. And then that kind of had me thinking about like, okay, maybe I should teach some jiu-jitsu in my hometown a little bit. And so that led to me very slowly like accepting that I live here, I should start teaching here at least while I'm here. And so I have a small group that I started teaching over at a local CrossFit gym called Go Primal, owned by a friend of mine named Chris. And I'm good friends with his wife Misty, who was one of the people who taught me to breakdance back in the day. And it just all kind of came together. And then one of my other friends here in town, he lent me some mats, and so then I had mats for my gym, and he was very kind. He was just like, no, just borrow the mats, sir. I don't need them right now. And now him like giving me the opportunity to buy them from him as a used car, like it's one of those things where Christian. One of my favorite things about going to Globe Charters was he had this class called Create Something that he teaches, little like hour-long seminar that he teaches about how to do things and just do cool things. And one of the things in it, he talks about karma. He talks about just kind of being good to people, even if you don't see anything that's going to come of it for you. And this time being back here in Gainesville, so many people have been so kind to me and just so gracious and giving to me. And it's like that kind of what Christian says, like the karma points, the karma that you plant for years, because I never thought of it that way until he said it, but it's a good point. Like I just tend to like being nice to people. Like it costs me nothing to be kind. It really doesn't cost me anything. Like to have that kind of coming back at me this year, and a lot of really great things that have been done for me by various people has been, I don't know, super fulfilling. Like I have enough mats to teach a very small, it's not a big group, but like I don't need it to be a huge group, but I can teach a small group of people a few times a week. And there's something about that just feels special to me. I've taught, every other time I've taught throughout my life has been for someone else's gym, or it's been me teaching seminars. And so like I love making an impact. So there's a couple of students at various gyms all over the world who every time I come, I get to see their growth, right? But it's like a huge jump. Like I haven't seen them for 6 months or a year, but I remember them and they're still using something I taught, which makes me feel good. But at the end of the day, like they're not my student. And so I get to be like the cool uncle who comes by, but like I'm not dad. And so to like have a couple of students where I can say like, okay, like I get to be dad. These get to be like my students, and I get to kind of shape them with my vision of jiu-jitsu, with the concepts and ideals that I have. I don't know, it has me feeling like all warm and fuzzy inside. So like I'm building a small program here in town. I'm still doing small trips out to places like Tampa and stuff, and Savannah. So you met Quentin, right, last time?
Yeah.
So anytime that I start thinking I'm too good at jiu-jitsu, I drive up to Savannah and have him demolish me for a few rounds to bring the humility back.
Yeah, I specifically remember that feeling from our trip to Atlanta.
Yeah, he moved from Atlanta to Savannah, so he's actually closer to Gainesville now. It's only a 2 or 3 hour ride instead of the 5 hours before.
Oh damn! Yeah, I remember that. My geography is not bad. I understand how the world looks and works, but living in the UK and then thinking that you could possibly drive from one end of the US to the other in a short amount of time, and it not be painful.
Yeah.
So just we've kind of referenced it a couple of times just for everyone listening. So me and Charles did this seminar tour last year where we started off in Gainesville and we did a seminar there. Then we drove just like 2,500 miles up the East Coast, which looking back on that idea now sounds very insane. Going up through,
we would be super spreaders if any of us caught it. We would be literally the devil to do that during the
to say like to do that now and like say those words now, you'd be run out of town. But back then, like how much does the world change? Because that was literally like 1 week before Corona.
And the thing is that no one looked at us sideways, like no one thought this was weird.
No, not at all. Didn't wear masks. So this is pre-Corona, so no one was wearing masks. But being able to drive that distance and go out to restaurants seems so alien right now. But yeah, so we drove up to Savannah, Georgia, to James Finicio's gym, which
that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and the podcast we did with Colin Moulton, that was hilarious.
Yeah, with Colin and Jimmy, that was so much fun.
Yeah, That was a crazy nice gym.
Shout out to the Barefoot Comedy podcast. Like that
Yeah.
was so much fun.
Hopefully, we can pop over and see him again.
Oh, sure. I saw Jimmy and James recently. They're doing really well.
Good. Then we went across Georgia to Atlanta to first to Quinton's gym, and we both got destroyed.
That was my favorite moment. Like, this is one of the things where I love about Quentin. He's just so consistent. Like, we both get out of a car. We've been in the car for like, what, 4 hours? Like, the whole way there, straight out of the car, straight onto the mats. And we're like, all right, let's start, man. Like, just got out of the car for 4 hours. He's like, oh, cool. Heel hook.
That's literally how it went. He's like warm. He's been training for ages. He's covered in sweat, and we're folded up.
Never changed, Quentin. It was absolutely great, because what I loved about it was my thought process was, because you're very frustrating for me to submit with any kind of maneuver more than once or twice in a row. Because when I think about rolling with you, I think about the board from Star Trek. Like, something's gonna work a couple of times, and then you have assimilated it, and now you're a pain in the ass again.
But actually, like whenever I roll with Naki, a student from my gym, he says I'm the most boring roll.
Yes.
Just because nothing happens. It's just tiny inches of chest fighting, and I understand that now. Now more people are saying it. Then we went over to Sean's at 10th Planet, Atlanta.
Yeah, that was fun.
Then I think that was an overnight trip up to Falls, wasn't it, to Frank's, where we trained in the back
in the police house.
Yeah, in the middle of nowhere.
Well, Sokoa is already a town. I think that town has less than 40,000 people. That town is small.
Yeah, it seemed really small. But being able to train at because obviously we don't have guns in the UK, so to train in a Georgia police station with zombie killing ammo or whatever it was, posters all over the wall, I was like, well, this is a strange day for me. Frank was in that short trip we did there. Then we obviously went straight up to Asheville, to Johnny's place, to North Carolina, which this is the kind of thing that where obviously I'm doing one of these with Johnny, and one of the main topics I want to go through is that how, for such a roguish individual, to have the most family-like team, like the culture he's cultivated in that gym.
Oh yeah, the culture of that gym is something special. That's what I meant. Like, every gym has that thing that you remember, and the team atmosphere at Rogue Combat Club is truly something special.
Yeah, I want to talk about that with him, and actually, because the amount of things I took from the atmosphere he's created and brought back to my own gym, I think people need to hear how he does it. And then I think after Asheville, we did that. It was something like 800 miles or something, wasn't it? We went through West Virginia or whatever to Washington, wasn't it?
Yeah, we stopped off for a little pit stop in DC so you could see the capital of our nation.
Yeah, and then that evening we were in Maryland, weren't we, at Kenneth Brown's gym?
Yeah. Second Gear Jiu-Jitsu.
Yes. Then straight up to Chris Ulbricht's. It was Chris's first, or was it in New Jersey?
Yep, he's in Jersey.
And then over to Brad Wolfson's and Greg's over in Connecticut. And I think we finished at Greg's, didn't we?
Yeah, I think Greg was the very last one, and then we took in New York and fed you some New York pizza and
amongst other things. Since when we went to Central Park.
Oh yeah, you climbed a random boulder in the middle of Central Park, a little random rock there, showing off your rock climbing skills. Kinds of fun stuff.
I'm not sure if I can actually mention fully what happened on this podcast, but I'm pretty sure when I click stop, we'll remind ourselves of what actually happened on that trip.
There was madness throughout the. Well, I think we lost you at one point. because you wanted to see the Brooklyn Bridge.
Yeah, I think
I think we were looking, and so we just left you. We just left you by yourself, wandering New York alone.
Actually, that's good. If you remember, I didn't realize this that edibles were, I don't know if they're legal in New York, but remember the gummy bears?
So the thing about that is it's all very, very, very hazy with that right now. So actually, I thought that they were, but the laws of that kind of stuff in America right now are really, really weird state to state.
Yeah.
And so I actually don't know, because I thought that they were, because there were those. That was what freaked me out about New York. I was so confused because there were literally like weed ice cream trucks everywhere selling edibles right next to the police. And I was just like, this is, because I hadn't been to New York since that was the way that it was. And I was looking at like a whole NYPD squad of people next to a weed ice cream truck. It was the strangest thing, but I guess New Yorkers know more than I do about this, but I guess it's all completely legal out there. But then I talked to somebody else, I said that it's not. So I don't know, man. America's marijuana laws are confusing. I don't actually know. I think maybe we can get into the full details of that a little later, because I think this is supposed to be an intro into the trip, not the whole thing, because I know how I am with rabbit holes, and like between that and like finding Jamaican food, there was so much great stuff that happened on that little wander.
And so as a slight maybe depending when people hear this, so we were recording this on the 19th of February 2021. We are hopefully going to be doing something similar, coronavirus.
Yes. I think we're hoping for, I want to do it before it gets horrible hot, but if we do it maybe June or July, because once we get into July, August, it's really hot. Like, it's comfortable for someone like me from Florida, but I'm pretty sure that you might melt. You might just die in the Florida heat.
I survived Tel Aviv, and that was like 43 degrees.
We got a different kind of humidity out here in Florida, man. We're literally
I can imagine it'd be pretty terrible, yeah.
But I have a surprise for you. So Natasha and I are going to take you on an airboat next time you come. You're going to get to see alligators on an airboat. That's definitely happening next time.
So, so there were two things there. This is exactly what we were on about with this whole Jiu-Jitsu is a great way of seeing the world thing. But also, if anyone's around, I don't know, America, I don't know how far we're going to get around about June time, and absolutely come and check us out. We're traveling.
Definitely going to be Florida and Georgia are guaranteed. Just whether or not we head up the East Coast again, or if we start heading west, because we've had some people from
Kentucky,
the Midwest and West talk. So we might have to make it like half road trip, half plane trip, because I don't know how much vacation or time away from home that you can have. Because getting to California is going to be pretty hard to then come back to New York. Like, this might be too much.
Yeah, I think just shy of 3 weeks. So I think we could probably take it to. Anyway, before we get completely sidetracked, we'll talk about this off the record. But if anyone's like listening to this,
we can get into them later.
Then please hit us up. But thank you. I'll start bringing this together. I say thank you to Charles now. If you have
thank you.
Any interest in watching his very traveled style of jiu-jitsu, like I say, he's got a lot of experience teaching around the world. He's taken a lot from going to numerous gyms. He's got plenty of Globetrotter videos he's taught at, and other places appeared. And definitely check out his breakdancing videos as well. And
and if you want a way to learn leg locks safely, I have a BJJ Fanatics DVD, Leg Locks 101, if you're interested in that. And also just bother me on the social medias. I like answering questions. And I have a Rockfin subscription site if you want to check out. There's a DAR seminar on there, along with some other stuff, and there's always new content being added. So that's me.
Yeah, so I'll say thank you now for giving me your time this evening.
Always.
And I'm looking forward to going on more of these adventures with you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to having you along again, and definitely picking your brain. Maybe next time we can talk about our get a little more nerdy about the jiu-jitsu concepts, because the thing about Chris is that I've had some very very conceptual, very well named seminars that I've taught at the BJ Globetrotters, and whenever I do one, Chris will teach one with the exact same name about a month to 3 months later, and usually teach everything that I taught, but then also have some shit I didn't think of that makes me feel like an asshole. So Charles Harriott teaches a class called Choke Theory. Chris Paynes teaches a class called Choke Theory. Charles Harriott teaches a class called Sweep Theory. Chris Paynes teaches a class called Sweep Theory. It's almost
I didn't know you did a Sweep Theory class. That's entirely separate. I didn't know you did a Sweep Theory class. Choke Theory, yeah, it was partially inspired by what you'd shown me. Sweep Theory, no, that's mine. Like you can't claim any ownership on that one.
No, it's not even like. That's the funny thing. I don't even actually think that you're just trying to bite from me. I think we're both actually like exploring jiu-jitsu in a rather similar way, which is why we ended up becoming friends, and why I chose to harass you, because we definitely are both trying to I don't know, I think get to this kind of like almost like E=MC² of jiu-jitsu, like trying to distill all the knowledge and rules that make sense in jiu-jitsu in order to like generalize ideas to make them easier to understand. And that's what I notice whenever I listen to you teach, is that you'll make statements that seem like they're BS, and then you analyze next time of the bitch. That's actually true. The one that I always remember is every single guard pass is putting some piece of your body between someone's armpit and the back of their knee, and then adding the rest. Like one of my favorite sentences that you've ever said, because like it's true, and it makes you understand in a kind of slightly different way, like what it is you're doing when you're passing guard. I'm a very big fan of these types of elegant sentences, and so like,
thank you.
We both try and do that, and so I think this was a good talk about my wandering, but I definitely want to have a more nerdy conversation with you again in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll contact you, and we'll see when we can do this again. But yeah, absolutely, we'll do one of these concept videos. So anyone on my Discord channel that heard this, like I said, Charles is very conceptually driven as well. If you have any questions for either of us, I'll make notes of them, and we'll do another one of these in the not too distant future.
Beautiful.
But yes, thank you so much, Charles, and I'll hopefully see you over the summer.
All right, see you then, my man.
Take care, dude. Drop.
Peace.